Here now to weigh in further on what Archer's testimony may mean for the Biden crime family and the current investigations into Hunter's illegal dealings. He's the founder and president of the Article 3 Project. Let's welcome back to the program, Mike Davis. So, Mike, you've probably read some of what some of the House Republicans have put out so far later this day about what Archer had to say during his testimony. I didn't pay too much mind to what the Democrats who came out in the hallways and commented on because, of course, they were like, well, there's no way any of this means that Joe Biden was involved in any illegal dealings. This just means that Mr. Archer and Hunter gave the illusion that Daddy was helping out. But it doesn't mean he's guilty. Is that what you got out of it?
Not at all. And I think what you're going to see is House Republicans move forward with impeachment of President Joe Biden based upon the facts that Joe Biden is compromised by these corrupt, illegal payments to the Biden family. There was a lot of money paid by Burisma, $10 million to Burisma, $5 million to Joe, $5 million to Hunter, and then Vice President Joe Biden threatened to cut off $1 billion in U.S. aid to Ukraine if the Ukrainian president didn't fire the Ukrainian prosecutor investigating Burisma and the Bidens. That is clear foreign bribery. There's tens of millions of dollars more in other corruption that House Oversight Chairman James Comer has been able to lock down. We're talking $30 or $40 million to the Biden family. It seems like every Biden except for the 4-year-old granddaughter was on some foreign payroll, and House Republicans must move forward with impeachment.
Yeah, that's what I don't get when Democrats and when TV pundits over at CNN, MSNBC, the rest of all the lying media sit up there and say, well, there's no clear evidence. Well, some bank accounts prove nothing. Excuse me. Why do children and grandchildren all of a sudden have hundreds of thousands or a couple mil dumped into their bank accounts? Because grandpa was being sweet or Unky Biden was being... No, give me a break. It's because he's been doing this for years. He knew how to hide it until now. And I got to think, if he was doing this as vice president and he was a senator for how many decades? I'll bet you dear old the big guy Joe has been peddling his influence for 30 or 40 years. I think it's a fair statement to make. I think we better start looking into back when he was a senator and some of the bills that he authored and things that he really pushed hard to ram through the Senate. Was he peddling his influence even back then?
Yeah, there's no question. Think about this. They're going after President Trump for the non-crime of a former president having his presidential records in the office of former president, which is allowed by the Presidential Records Act. Joe Biden had 5 stashes of stolen classified records, moved several times unguarded for years, accessible by their Chinese agent, and almost certainly used by Hunter Biden to secure tens of millions of dollars and foreign bribes and other corruption. The Bidens are rotten to the core. The president of the United States is compromised, and House Republicans must impeach him.
Thank you. Every time we get a member of not just that committee, any Republican member, I'm going to now ask them and put their feet to the fire. Why aren't you pushing for the impeachment? There are more and more now, right? You've got Boebert, MTG, Burchett from Tennessee. There's been a handful that have introduced articles of impeachment. But you know, we need to start seeing 220 of them or something like that come forward and say, yes, I'm fully behind this. I don't know how much more of a smoking gun you need when you have a president who's in office, who has peddled his influence as VP, most likely as senator, and now is compromised as president with the country of China. Let me ask you that illusion statement, because I noticed over the last couple of hours since the hearing ended, that's the new fake news dialogue, right? That Devin Archer, along with Hunter, possibly, they don't want to throw Hunter under the bus too much over there on those liberal networks. They were peddling the illusion that they had the power of the vice presidency, but Joe wasn't involved. He just maybe hopped on the phone to say, hi, I heard some Democrat pundit say today on TV. Do you think 20-some plus phone calls is what Archer testified to today? Okay, not to mention in-person meetings at dinners. That's not just saying hi when you're talking about multi-million-dollar deals. Now, is it, Mike?
No, I mean, not only were there over 20 personal meetings involving then Vice President Joe Biden, then Vice President Joe Biden again threatened to cut off $1 billion in U.S. aid. President Obama put Vice President Biden in charge of Ukraine. The Bidens cashed in. Russia smelled the weakness and the corruption and took Crimea. We didn't have any invasion of Ukraine by Russia during 4 years of the Trump administration. And here we are with Biden back in the White House, and Russia is trying to take the rest of Ukraine. There are consequences to foreign bribery and corruption. It creates weakness that foreign adversaries like Russia will exploit, and they are exploiting.
I think that Joe thought his career was over. Barack put him in charge of Ukraine, and he thought he would fleece the living hell out of it and get as much cash as he could because he figured he was done in politics. Let's be real. Trump ran one, right? And when the Democrats first started throwing up all their candidates in 19 before the 2020 election, nobody thought Joe Biden had a snowball's chance in hell. He was the bottom of the barrel, right? And then when their Mayor Pete and when their Kamala and the rest of them were hovering around 5-6%, they went, let's try this old guy. We can tag team on the coattails of Obama. And they threw Joe in. But I firmly believe he thought, I'm done, I'm over. Barack's given me this gift. I will just use Hunter and we will milk Ukraine for all we can. And now, as you said, he's compromised. I want to run a soundbite from CNN over the weekend. You probably saw it. It has been just tearing up the, I think I'm supposed to say X now, but I still call it Twitter. It's tearing up the Twitter sphere and Instagram and Facebook. This is a conservative contributor to a panel over at CNN. They were discussing Archer's testimony that was going to go down today. And they bring up Hunter and his dealings. They also bring up the 7th grandchild, which all of a sudden, they must have got bad PR. Joe Biden over the weekend said he has a 7th grandchild, and Hunter acknowledged his kid. Listen to this, and we'll get your take on the backside.
It's not Republicans, with all due respect, who made Hunter Biden into a complete scumbag on this and other issues. The ignoring his own daughter for 4 years, and the President of the United States hanging up a stocking for the dog, and not for his 7th grandchild.
Okay, look, we can also have sympathy for people who are struggling with addiction. Let's keep this conversation respectful.
Listen, I totally agree. And you know where I'm from? A lot of families deal with addiction. And you know who ends up picking up the pieces? The grandparents. And in this case, the grandparents would not acknowledge this little girl. It is offensive. But the bottom line is...
But they have now.
Oh, what a hero. The polling must have been brutal.
I just got to say to the host, you suck up, brown nose. Let me find you some tissue. They have now. Oh, by the way, addiction. Your thoughts on that little back and forth?
Scott Jennings is a friend and former colleague of mine, and I am very happy and proud of him for going on CNN and saying what needs to be said. The Bidens are absolute scum for denying that they had this grandchild. Even if the president was embarrassed or ashamed of this grandchild, he's the president of the United States. Joe Biden's the first lady. They could have quietly helped this young girl to make her life better. Instead, these scumbags went out of their way to make her life more difficult. Joe and Jill Biden can go to hell.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mike. And it only took bad poll numbers for them to finally acknowledge that sweet grandchild. And if folks don't think they're scum and wouldn't rip off this country and backstab us, just look what they do to their own flesh and blood, ladies and gentlemen. Mike Davis, founder and president over Article 3 Project. You want to know what they're doing over there? They're fighting hard. It's Article 3project.org is the website to learn more. Mike, as always, thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.